Welcome. We're David and Hillary, and this is our movie post-view of the movie The Unbreakable Boy. So if you're new to our channel or any of our videos, every time we review a movie, we do two reviews, a preview and a post-view. The preview has no spoilers, but tells you enough about the movie that you can decide if you want to see it or not. We have one for this movie, but this isn't it. This is the post view where we talk about all the spoilers and all the things that, if you want to see the movie, you maybe don't want to see this until after that. But if you're in the right place, welcome.
Welcome.
We're glad you're here.
We're here to spoil it all.
So, The Unbreakable Boy, really good movie. I mean, hard to watch at times.
Yeah. I think we've mentioned before, we try to not learn anything about movies before we go. I mean, except for the basics, like, can we handle this movie?
We want to know content. We're not into movies with a lot of sex or whatever, but
right.
Or like gore fest. We don't do that. But if we think we can handle it, we maybe watch the trailer, because we go to a lot of movies. We see the trailers anyway.
Right.
And then other than that,
I want to be surprised.
Yeah.
And I was surprised.
Yeah, it was sadder and heavier than I thought it was going to be, especially from the trailer. The trailer made it look a little lighter and more fun. So, I wasn't upset about that, but it was different than I thought it was going to be.
Which actually, I kind of like when you go into a movie. I don't like when you watch the trailer and you're like, I think I just saw the movie.
Right.
So
just
that was
saw
good.
the Reader's Digest version of the entire movie.
So this movie has so much depth about struggle. We find out pretty early in the movie that besides having autism, Austin has degenerative bone disease, brittle bone disease. Yeah. And they don't know about that condition at first. And so there's just like layer upon layer upon layer of struggle. Any one of those things would have been very difficult.
Right.
Austin has autism, and mom and dad got pregnant in their relationship very, very early. I think they didn't
even know each other that well.
They were really just dating.
They didn't even know if they really liked each other. Well,
yeah.
If you saw the movie, of course, you saw the scene where they're trying to decide if they even, like, I think I love you. What do you mean you think you love me? I mean, that whole thing, they're still trying to figure out if they like each other enough to stay together, and boom, she's pregnant. And then the baby's bones break during birth, and they don't know it. I mean, it's just so much, so fast.
So much.
Yeah. And then as it goes on, we find out that dad is super likable, but also an alcoholic, and that's affecting things. And then he loses his job. Mom, we find out, has, a lot of dysfunction and trauma associated with her growing up years, and that's affecting her. Then at one point, Austin's on the wrong meds.
Right,
I mean, it's just, it's so much.
So many. I mean, you're just watching this thinking, how much more can this family take? It's just so much struggle. Life is hard. Everyone's life is hard to some degree.
In some way.
But this felt like a lot.
Yeah.
There is also a bully in the story. So Austin's brother, Logan, keeps getting bullied at school.
Right.
And Austin, for some reason, is actually still nice to this bully. And finally, I love where Logan gets fed up with him. He's like, why do you like this bully so much? And Austin just says, well, because he's sad. His dad's in jail. He didn't have a good Christmas. And I thought, I love that he can see people, even though all the hard things going on in his life, any one of those things, you could just feel sorry for yourself. He still is just so unbreakable and so optimistic, and he sees this boy that even though he's mean, Austin is like, no, I see him. I know why he's mean. I loved it. I love that part.
That was cool.
Yeah.
One other layer, Scott, the dad's invisible friend, Joe.
Yeah.
What the what? I mean, brother's way into adulthood, and he still has this invisible friend that you kind of forget is not an actual physical person.
Right.
It's a character in the movie. You're like, oh my gosh.
I have a lot of like, what's the word? Like forgiveness for that? Compassion. I mean, you're talking to the girl that thinks puppets are real. So I'm like, what? I mean, it's not weird that he had a friend.
That came in handy when you were a preschool teacher, but I mean, I thought that part was cleverly done for the movie, and at times it was really
Yes.
fun, but it was also kind of weird, you know. And then at one point, Scott asked Joe if he's God, and I was like, "What? Where?" You know, I mean, this movie's hard to watch for a while, and but I thought I kind of knew what they were doing, and then you're gonna make the invisible friend God, which of course they don't.
Right.
It turns out
No.
okay, and it was kind of funny, but
Yeah.
wow, that was something.
Yeah. I didn't mind that part probably as much as you did.
Well,
I'm
just
not
for
saying I have an invisible friend, but if I did, I would hope you'd accept her.
okay, moving on. I thought Scott's parents were good. You know, it starts out a little rough when the mom, played by Patricia Heaton, who's always really good, I think.
Yes. So
When
good.
she finds out that the girlfriend Teresa and they weren't married at that time, of course, Scott comes and tells them, "Oh, my girlfriend's pregnant. I just wanted you to know." And she's kind of freaking out, going in and out of the room, passive aggressive, yelling, not
Yes.
saying anything.
I loved how her husband handled it, though. He just sat there patient. He thought,
He's like,
you just
yeah.
know. He's like, yeah, she'll get over it. She'll
That
be
was
fine.
such
just
a
give her a minute.
classic. These two have been married for a long time moment where he's like, yeah, give it time.
Yeah.
But then, well, when they met Teresa for the first time, like, she's pregnant, but they haven't. In the movie, they implied that Scott's parents never met Teresa during that whole pregnancy until they came to the hospital. And that was awkward, but funny. And I wondered how true to life it was. I wasn't able to find out the answer to that, but that was crazy. But then later when things get, you know, really real, and Scott's dealing with alcoholism, and Teresa kicks him out, and he ends up living with mom and dad. I mean, they were good. They were good
there.
people. They were there for him, and I appreciated that.
And they wanted the best for all of them.
Yeah.
They really did. It wasn't us against them. It was, we're
Right.
all in this. Another really funny part that I liked was Teresa was trying to get Scott to go to church with them. Mm-hmm. And so she finally gets him there, and they're meeting like in the foyer, and she's like, take Austin to the bathroom. He's got to go to the bathroom. And just, you know, taking any child to the bathroom is difficult. But I think the autism added another layer of difficulty to
Right.
this. So Scott's got all he can do to try to manage this situation. And there's another gentleman in there who was trying to help. He's like, hey, do you need any help? He's like, no, I've got this. I've got this. And of course, he didn't have this. And I forget, what was Austin wearing when he was running out?
Just his underwear.
Yeah, so he did have
Yeah.
underwear on at least.
There might have been superheroes on the underwear. I can't remember.
I mean, you know, but so he's running now. He's running through the church in his undies, and of course, that's when Scott finds out that gentleman in the bathroom trying to help him was the pastor. Of course, it was. Yeah. So I'm sure people have their own stories of, oh, that was the first time I met the pastor.
Right.
But later in the movie, Scott he does go to AA. He ends up at a meeting,
Yep.
and he sees the pastor there, and he kind of is a little, I don't know, he seems a little almost angry or defensive. He's like, well, what are you doing here? He's like, well, I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And I thought, I loved that moment. And just like, well, why else would I be here? Because I struggle with alcoholism, and I don't want to, so I'm here. So I thought it was great.
And nobody said it out loud, but I thought that was cool because it kind of implied that God can help turn around anybody and do
Absolutely.
amazing things with your life. You wouldn't expect the pastor of all people to be an alcoholic. And he was a recovering alcoholic, but that's part of recovery is you just kind of go, well, this is what I am.
Mm-hmm.
I have to accept it, and I'm working to not let it control me, but I'm honest about it. And that was really good.
Yeah.
Well, it was completely different scene, but I just thought, it was crazy that Austin's meds got mixed up, and he didn't. Nobody really knew that's what was happening, but it wasn't like him, and that whole thing was crazy. But they got it straightened out, and I love the fact that even though he was so unique and at times he was a lot, and some people didn't like him because they didn't understand him, that so many of the school kids really wanted him to come back when they
Yes.
realized that he was, that they got everything kind of figured out and he wasn't really a threat. And they said, well, Austin's got to come back. We want him back. That was cool.
That was a good moment.
Yeah.
I love when his parents go to pick him up after he had an extended stay at the hospital.
Yeah.
And he's so excited to see them. What was that phrase he said? He's like, oh, come on in. There's a lot of people that need help here. Or
There's a lot of really messed up kids in
there's
here.
really a lot of messed up people here. Not him,
Right.
But and he was already trying to help people
Yeah.
and to love people, and it's just who he was. It was so encouraging. Something else that I really liked was the way that Austin counted time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we had talked about in another one of our movie post views about Lord of the Rings time and Rugrats time. We talked about
Yep.
different ways to count time. Well, Austin only counted the time that that you were really going to be thinking about it. So, like,
They were talking about the camping trip,
Yeah.
which was still a couple months away.
yep.
And
So-
instead of 8 weeks or what is that, over 50
was-
days?
yeah.
Yeah.
So he's like, okay, well, first of all, birthdays don't count, weekends don't count,
Sleeping.
sleeping doesn't count, and there was a New Year's Eve party that doesn't count.
Yeah.
So he whittled that down to about 19 days. I thought, oh, I need to count like this.
It's only 19 days. And, his
19
dad,
days away.
his dad is like, yeah, but it's not going to be 19 days. But
Yeah.
what happens when 19 days are up and we're still well over a month away? But yeah, it was funny.
Hey, us optimists, we want to just do it. So us and our imaginary friends, we're fine with it.
Okay. So, I love the movie, but I thought, they did a great job of letting you know how hard this was, how hard with all the things we talked about, the brittle bone and the autism, plus all the other stuff that the whole family was dealing with. But then at the end, it was like everything turned out fine. Everything was great. And I thought, that was kind of almost too little amount of information about how they did the turnaround too late in the movie and kind of too fast. So that was the negative part of it for me. But then the more I thought about it, I thought, I think the movie makers and probably even the family really wanted the viewers to know how hard this was.
Right.
They didn't want to candy coat it. Mm-hmm. And, but almost as a bonus, throwing it in at the end of the movie was, but we didn't give up. And that they did stick with it and eventually kind of figured it out, how to work through all their crap and how to get along as a family, as individuals and as a family unit, and kind of, that they didn't leave you hanging. And I did like that.
Yeah, I wonder, it wasn't a very long movie. I wonder what the thinking was behind making it longer. I would have definitely sat through a longer version of that if they had wanted to take the ending and go a little bit slower with it to show how the turnaround happened. But I don't know how all those decisions get made, but it wasn't that we were tired of the movie.
Yeah.
It was fairly short. So
Maybe they thought because they did focus on the negative stuff, it would be too much if they went too much longer. I don't know.
Well, yeah, maybe, but I am glad that,
I know what you're saying, though.
Yeah, I'm glad that they showed us that things did turn around. But
Yeah.
you're right. It did feel like it was difficult, and then happy ending. But anyway, I'm glad.
Well, anytime you're telling a true story, it needs to be good movie making, because if it's not interesting and if it's not entertaining, people aren't going to watch it. But if it's true and you want to make sure that people understand what really happened or kind of how it ends. Mm-hmm. I mean, none of them are super old still, but where are they today? Then you kind of got to get there. So,
Yeah, and it was hard, but they didn't give up, and they showed that getting to that good place was worth it. One of the thoughts that I had when we were talking about this afterwards is that they really seem to be trying to practice living right in the moment. And that's very difficult. I just, as old as we are, I think we always feel that tug, like either living in the past where you're struggling with regret, or you're living a little bit or a lot in the future, and you can tend to struggle with fear.
Right.
But it just seemed like they really were just trying to say, okay, we're going to get through this. We're going to live in the moment. We're going to be present.
Yeah.
And I really liked that.
Yeah. It was good.
Yeah.
Speaking of at the very end of the movie where they kind of gave you updates about the family, I like that. I always like that. But it was cool that they seem to be a strong family to this day. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, who knows? They're not going to tell you about the little struggles that they still have after going through that whole movie, but it seemed like they were in a good place.
Yeah.
Logan and the bully became friends, which is you don't expect, and then they still hang out to this day.
Yep.
That was
awesome.
Love
that. Great that mom and dad stayed together.
Yeah, for sure, because it did not look
out.
like that was going to happen at one point.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been very easy to believe that they didn't.
Yeah.
So, but they did.
Yep, and dad got sober.
Yep.
So it was cool.
Yep.
It was cool.
Yeah, and again, the tagline from, I think we mentioned before that
we mentioned it in the preview too, but
yeah, it was in the trailer.
Yeah.
And it says, the dad says, "I wish I could enjoy anything as much as my son enjoys everything."
Yeah.
And I think we can learn from that and learn just to, this is all you got, this moment, this day, this is it. And if you're not going to be enjoying this moment, you're going to miss out. And so I think it was a good reminder. I loved it.
Yeah.
Highly recommend.
Highly recommend.
Yeah.
Well, if you're watching this, you probably saw it, but if you didn't, hopefully we didn't spoil it too much that you don't want to see it, because you know there's nothing like sitting through the full movie. It's really great, and hope you enjoyed our time together. We got a lot more stuff on our YouTube channel, The David and Hillary Show. Check it out, and we appreciate your time. For now, we're David and Hillary.
The movie was The Unbreakable Boy,
and that's our post view.